Whoa, that's kind of cool. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Org Lifecycle Management, Empowering Admins, which is an interesting session to do at a developer conference, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about admins, a little bit about developers, a little bit about everybody, and a lot about empowerment. That will become a little more apparent as we move forward. Everyone knows what an org is? Everyone knows who management is at your company? Life cycle, sort of a little weird. All right, let's go through that. Let's start with me. So I've been working with the Salesforce platform for 11 years. I got my start at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, cleaning up data, went to consulting companies, independent consultant for a while, built some of our large implementations back in the day. These are my Scout badges. I like donuts. I think my biggest claim to fame is I started the Dreamforce Tweet Up, which at the time was the largest private party at Dreamforce. Definitely been with the Salesforce community for a while. Joined Salesforce 2 years ago to be a platform architect on our HLS team with healthcare life sciences. A large reason I joined is that I've seen a lot of stuff happening at customers, and it was nice to bring that into Salesforce to say, how are we going to work with our customers knowing what they've been through? I'm an honorary ranger. Welcome to Trailhead X. So anyway, there's my silly hat. But let's talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. This is the place for forward-looking statements. We're not going to go into what the I would love to do a session, by the way, on what is the safe harbor statement and like go through bit by bit. Do not make any. Look, you know what it is. Forward-looking statements are forward-looking statements. Purchase based on what's today. Beta doesn't mean it's going to be around later. Pilot doesn't mean it's going to be around later. Everyone cool? All right. A little bit of etiquette, a little bit of housekeeping. Ask a question, please. The multi-parts are a little weird for everybody, so let's keep them, and then afterwards we're happy to go into all the jazz. And I will repeat the question when someone asks it. If I don't, say, repeat the question, because I want to be nice to everybody. Cody says, we're going to do some introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about change management, because here we are really here to empower. And I'm going to go through a couple of stories about why admins need a little bit of empowering. Admins are the unsung heroes and often the downtrodden, the fallen, the go for this kind of people at a company. And admins are a lot more important than we give admins credit for. Admins also have to deal with developers. As a former developer myself, I know we are a hard group to get along with. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to get into some nuts and bolts about what admins can do to make sure that the org runs right. Because when your org runs wrong, things don't go so well, and it's nice being an admin, but you're in charge, so you are standing up there on the firing line. We'll go into some resources and then Q&A. So let's talk a little bit about what to do. The things that I like to tell every admin to do, and by the way, the most obvious one that is not on this slide, when making changes in an org, what do we do when we make changes in an org, or what don't we do when we don't make changes in the org, right? The first rule about org changes is don't change in the org. Sandboxes and developer edition, right? Everyone knows how to get a developer edition. Does anybody here only have one developer edition? Good. I have about 200. You should have close to that. Basically, start one up any one time you like. Try something out. Break it. It's fine. We'll make more. Learn standard features. There's a wonderful App Exchange partner that decided at one time to build business hours into their application. We have a business hours object within Salesforce that you can unlock. Let's not recreate the wheel, right? Learn the standard stuff. Reinvent the wheel, sorry. Process Builder is awesome, and all of that. Now, when we are, as a solution engineer, I have to talk with customers about what they want to do. Customer says to me, this is what I want to do. And what I have to say is, why do you want to do it? The big story, so tell me if this has happened or something similar to anyone here. I was at a company working, consulting for them, and the VP of sales comes out and says, I want a checkbox on the opportunity. Okay? Anyone, tell me this is familiar to anybody so far. Like, I want a, right? Why do you want a checkbox on the opportunity? I did a very good job. I want to track the media opportunities in our org. Okay, so an opportunity is going to be like media related. Yeah, are there any companies that are not media related sometimes? And no. A company is always media or it's not media. But you want a checkbox on the opportunity, right? Yeah. What if we want to do another vertical? No. I want a checkbox on this. You can see where this is going. So the point of that is that we are going to learn to say no. Don't say no. say no while, tell them to go somewhere while making them enjoy the trip, right? We want to be empowered to see what's going on, and the best way to do that is to be focused on the underlying why, and to know what the effects of what happens if they get what they want will be. So in general, we want to create a process. I don't know many administrators at companies that I work for who also sit in the C-suite. I also don't know many administrators who, how do I put it delicately, who are not stuck out there, like for someone to shoot at regularly, right? A lot is on your shoulders. Secure some overhead protection. Find someone, make them think they are your mentor. They don't know Salesforce, but hey, that's fine. Whatever it takes. Secure executive support. Now, why do we want to do that? Because we want processes. And this executive, by the way, we're going to get a little bit of change management, manage upwards, make your boss a rock star, implement processes to handle requests. Now, we can go on and devote an entire hour to internal idea exchange, make a suggestion box project on the trailhead, whatever you want to do, have a process. If you want to integrate with Jira, have at it, kids. Whatever it's going to be to let people put in suggestions and to prioritize. And then really do know when to say no. There are some things that we are going to put through our process, and there are some things that are never going to make it into our process because they're bad ideas. We love brainstorming at Salesforce. We encourage everyone to brainstorm. At some point, someone needs to say, that's not going to happen. A center of excellence. Does anyone know do people know what a center of excellence is? Now, even if you're at a small company, even if you're, and I get pushback on this all the time from our smallest customers. I don't need a center of excellence. Well, okay, so don't call it a center of excellence, but what do you think about having a council of people that gets together regularly and decides what features are going to go into Salesforce? Yeah, I need that. Okay, so call it whatever you want, but transparency is key here, guys. You want to make sure the company knows who's there. You've got stakeholders from lines of business. You've got stakeholders from executives, and you only invite, by the way, the people who need to come in. I was put in, for a brief amount of time, within Salesforce, the company, on the Opportunity Council. We have an entire council for the Opportunity Object, an entire group. It was very interesting to see what's going on, because people who were interested in that were invited to the meeting, and if you're working on cases, you don't get invited. That's fine. Divide up the responsibility that way. Set up a structure, and make sure that your scope is set right. So for us, we were working on opportunity. In particular, by the way, we were working on enhanced lookups, which is one of my favorite features that no one ever turns on and should. All declarative, but enhanced lookups might be my favorite little unsung feature. My point is, we want to make sure that whatever happens, there are a lot of people involved. And you're going to see in a little bit why that's really important, that people know what's going on. Here we're going to get a little technical. To be successful as an administrator, you need to know your enterprise ecosystem. I don't know many of our customers who use only Salesforce and no other cloud-based system. Maybe some of you are using Salesforce and like on-premises email or something, and I get that and I respect that. But if you're using Salesforce and Gmail, Salesforce and Concur, Salesforce and some other system, maybe you're using SAP, name a system that's out there that you can integrate with, you need to know that it exists. Every administrator should be able to, on demand, this is me talking, not any company policy, draw out your entire IT ecosystem for what's going on, everything that touches Salesforce. Because when someone says, I want to make a change to the contact object, you can say, yeah, but that legacy portal that we've got is making writes to the contact object. You make too many changes, you can change the labels, that's fine. You change a field, and we're gonna have some words here. So know what's going on, and use single sign-on. I'm just gonna tell you this because this is kind of cool. This is not part of my script. Salesforce uses Einstein. What do you think is the first thing that people buy when people buy Salesforce? Like, statistically, Sales Cloud, right? What's the second thing that people buy after they own Sales Cloud? It's not Service Cloud. I saw you mouthing Service Cloud. I'm like, yeah, I would be right there. No, it's our platform features. It's things like single sign-on. It's things like what we call platform apps that don't involve opportunities, ways to run your company. So know all that integration, because those tend to come in from outside systems, or use mobile apps. So know what's going on. And keep your own list, right, of all your integrated fields. Know your system and know what's one step outside your system. Let's talk a bit about change management beyond what we talked about already, and just the principles of change management. collect ideas. I mean, this is pretty basic. Collect, analyze, do it, and train it. That's what we need to do. Don't forget, it's your job is not done once you roll out a feature. Your job is done once everyone's using it. And if your company has a CIO, that person is responsible for, generally, among other things, adoption. If people aren't using things that you build, that person's job might be on the line. So make sure that you train end users to make your CIO very, very happy so that people actually do what's going on. We're not going to get into tools that Salesforce has built in for how to see what people are doing. They exist. Talk to your account executive. But build everything after you know what's going on, and let's talk about how to get everything set up. The wonderful box, I think this is kind of a playoff of Dwight Eisenhower's prioritizing thing. For Salesforce, we generally we put things on level of effort and the security impact. Trust is our #1 value. I have to say that because, okay. Don't forget that we've got things that you can do immediately. What's an immediate thing that I can do? Maybe a report, add a field to an object that's not going to touch anything. You also want, as a company, to have a cadence cycle. Every project should be put into a cadence. Not like a sprint like developers do, but okay, our Center of Excellence meets once a month, so we're going to put things out monthly. That's on the left side. That's not going to have so much impact. Those are for the sort of the low things where we're not touching. Essentially, if you're touching a profile object in a big way, you're already on the right side of that box. Changing user permissions, building a large new app that people have to use. So if you're rolling anything out into either Salesforce 1, if you're building a new app that's going to come up internally, when you upgrade to Lightning Experience, when, not an if, when, because it's a thing, it's good. I didn't like it, and then I tried it, and I forced myself to do it for like a week, and I actually like it. So I feel like that kid on the Life cereal commercial, but yeah, Mikey does like it. And up in that top right box is something that matters more than probably anything else, and if you want to look like a rock star, learn that top right box. Salesforce has major releases 3 times a year. We talk about that as if they are, and they are, amazing in how they work. They also get in the way of some of our administrators because you want to push out your own projects too. Now we're going to push ours out no matter what, right? So that train's coming down the tracks. Stagger what you're doing based on our releases. So when you've got something that's really, really big, put it out 2 weeks after our major release. Upgrade your sandbox early. Don't forget, we do the sandbox upgrade cycle, and if you don't know about the early pre-release, there's always a blog post that comes out. Learn it, live it, love it. Get your stuff set, and then wait a little bit after our major release to put out your big thing. If it's going to happen around Dreamforce, you might want to hold off until like a week after Dreamforce because we tend to roll out a lot of stuff around Dreamforce. Does that make sense? So major, 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 like seriously take your monthly cadence and shift it a little bit. We won't break your existing stuff, but you'll discover possibly if you went through the sandbox that some of the stuff you were going to build, we've already built. It does happen, and that's okay, right? Now let's talk about sandboxes, because sandboxes are where things happen. And if you cloud building, what's cloud building? Yay, Salesforce putting 2 words together that But sandboxes are a key part of cloud building. We build clouds? No, we build in the cloud. Let's talk about sandboxes. Let's get a little nitty-gritty for a moment. They are on their own infrastructure. Sandboxes sit on their own hardware. Don't forget, Salesforce is built on hardware. It is a cloud that is very concrete. In fact, it's very concrete. It's hardened. But use your sandboxes and use your templates for faster sandbox production. I encourage everyone, and we're going to go into the different kinds of sandboxes, I encourage everyone to look at the larger sandboxes that we own for your larger projects. There are very good reasons for doing that. The downside of copying your entire org into a full sandbox is half that stuff you don't need because your project doesn't touch it. So use templates. Use change sets for easier deployment. We're going to go into why that happens. And I recognize someone's going to say, David, the checkboxes on the change set are a really big pain. Do people know what change sets are? It's how you move from sandbox up, and you got to set up the connection and all that jazz, and you got to check the thing, the box, and and it's also the best way to do it with a little bit of governance and a really nice audit trail, so that people know who's doing what. And in a few slides, you're going to see why it's really important to know who's doing what. Don't forget, we've also got IDEs for faster deployment. If you know what an IDE is, that's great. You can use it. You can always deploy with that. I use Maven's Mate or Eclipse or whatever else is handy. You can use whatever you want. and you need to do the deployment. That's going to be very important in a second. Let's take a look at our sandboxes here. Difference between developer and developer pro. Does anybody know the difference? Size, data storage, and file storage. That's it. That's it. If you need a whole lot of data, you probably want to go to partial copy, but developer pro, I say, and I'm saying this on a microphone, if someone comes up and says, I need a developer pro sandbox, and they don't need that much data, I have a big ego is what they're really saying. Most things can be done on a regular developer sandbox. There are, however, reasons for developer pro that are going to become very apparent in a minute with Salesforce DX, where you're going to start doing large project coalescing. Now it's actually becoming really important. I think dev pros are going to be a very popular sandbox for people who need more than a developer. Partial copy, you get 10,000 records, random records from your objects, and full copy is a full copy of what you've got. All of our foundation customers are included in the enterprise edition level of how many sandboxes. And by the way, 100 sandboxes is a ton of sandboxes. So use them, delete them, get rid of them. They should be like dev orgs. Now, what's the difference between a dev org and a developer sandbox is features. Let's get into that in 1 second. So the features on developer, I can refresh developer and dev pro every 1 day, partial copy 5 days, and full every 30 days. Does anyone see where that could be good or bad for what you're working on? I love messing up my developer sandbox, and what do? I either delete it because I got more, or I refresh it. And I did it yesterday, so I refresh, and then tomorrow I refresh it again. Full copy sandbox, got to wait 30 days. Be very careful when you take a big chance in a full copy sandbox, which is why we talk about doing your changes early in your process in smaller sandboxes and moving along. And you get data, and then the other stuff is, yes, different size, and then partial copy, full copy. One thing for you to talk to your anyone in your company about is if you buy more licenses or if you add on a feature, there's a wonderful screen on the sandbox. Go into, company information, that wonderful screen where it's got like, I own these licenses and this, and there's a button there that says like refresh licenses. So if you buy something in production, I buy 1,000 licenses in production, and I want those to come into my sandbox. I just go to that screen, I hit refresh licenses, and you wait like 10 seconds. It's become production. So my point is you don't need to make a new sandbox to get your production licenses. Does that make sense? Right. Scratch orgs, they are sandboxes, but they're not sandboxes. They have a UI, but we don't really worry about it unless we absolutely have to. We can make changes, but we get in there through the command line. They are very important. They are not persistent. They expire after something like 7 days. They're good for test coverage. They're good for spinning up really quickly. Someone said, but why don't I use a sandbox? My answer is because I can spin it up like that and never have to go to my email to verify who I am and go through all that stuff. They are not going to be amazing in the long run for building a project in, because they are actually going to go away pretty soon. Use them for testing, or don't use them for testing and give them to your developers to use for testing. And that, I keep on alluding to when we're going to talk about that. It's coming up, I swear. Scratch orgs can feed into sandboxes. They work with sandboxes. They are more a developer tool. I don't know many administrators that are ever going to touch Scratch orgs. That's okay. One of the things about Salesforce is that separation of responsibilities. Admins have a very important role, which often involves putting in your username and password to deploy that final change set. That's a lot of responsibility. Don't worry about how the Scratch orgs come about. Now, when we make a sandbox, as an administrator, this is something, anyone work in a regulated environment? Anyone have to follow any federal guidelines ever? Two, finance, healthcare, education, so all of those, there are rules, right? You don't want people to know things. In order to write Apex, and you need to know this, not if you're going to write Apex, but because other people might write Apex, you need to have view or modify all data as a permission, which means all of those wonderful fields that you hide from your developers in production because they don't need it, because they're just doing whatever they're doing, they can see in your full copy sandbox. Not a good idea, right? Your lawyers are going to not enjoy this. So when you do make a sandbox, you might need to make some scripts. You want to do cleaning out data, which is not a problem in a developer edition sandbox, but in a full sandbox, you might want to clean out some of that or use a template. Edit your users. You can remove permissions, change permissions, update permissions. and load some sample data to make people a little bit happy. And there are ways you can do that within your org. Look up how to use a static resource, CSVs, build a script. There are plenty of partners here who would love to help you load sample data into a sandbox for your developers to work on, so they've got like a developer sandbox with the approved sample data. Scrambling usernames is one that I like to do, so that someone can't say, well, I've got, by the way, as an aside, CEOs should never have write capability into an org, right? They like bright, shiny objects. They love their dashboards. Don't let them touch a thing like that. Also, don't tell them that sandboxes exist. But if they find out that, so they can look over your shoulder, but if they find out, scramble their usernames. There's no email that comes through, your username's been changed that I know of, just change it so they can't actually get in. So we want to say, okay, only the people that need the sandbox can get in. And freezing. Everyone freeze users? Has anyone ever frozen a user? Is that the coolest feature, right? You can own records, I can do stuff to you, but you can't get in? Yes. And you can mass freeze users. It's really cool. This is what I want to get to. And this blue line going down the middle is your best friend. Let's go over this from left to right. When we are looking at how to create new stuff in our org, because lifecycle management ultimately is about developing applications within Salesforce, which is an application. Yay, Gartner. We'll use buzzwords all the time. How do I figure out what's going on? The first thing you do is you use a developer edition. Why is that? Because all the stuff that you pay for in your org comes free in a developer edition org. You want to learn about encryption at rest within Salesforce? You want to jump through the hoops about getting that enabled in somewhere in your sandbox? Why don't you just try turning it on in a developer edition org and playing with it there? Your developers can then take those changes and push them into a developer sandbox. I know, developer edition, developer sandbox. Sound the same, not the same. Confuses me, confuses other people. Developer sandboxes are all over the place. 1 per developer is fine. 2 per developer is fine. 2 developers to 1 sandbox, not always fine, right? They're going to be stepping on each other's toes, except that we've got the Salesforce DX thing that suddenly it actually makes sense and works. So now some of our own point of view that Salesforce is working on for Sandbox, well, yesterday morning might start changing, right? So, but if someone wants a developer edition Sandbox, just give it to them. Have fun, guys. Have fun to your coders. If she comes up and is like, I need a sandbox to play with something. One of our best customers at USAA, you know, the insurance company, right? So you know what they do? They give sandboxes out to anybody. You want to do should we do the Oprah thing? But if you get a developer sandbox, you build your own app. It's in a copy of what's going on. You do a trailhead, it inspires you, you build it within your sandbox, you da-da-da-da-da. Suddenly you've created an app as a regular user that you can take to the center of excellence and you can be a hero and, oh my gosh, you've got a travel approval process going on that someone from some division just decided to make for fun. Give out developer sandboxes, they're fun. What we do is developers need to worry about what's on the left side of the blue line. So coalesce your changes into a Dev Pro sandbox, that's a good idea. Find a way to get, basically, this is what we want to do. Then it goes into a full copy sandbox. We recommend a full copy sandbox for a couple of reasons, including integration. If you've got any integrations going into Salesforce, you want to test those with all the data. Because if I can come up to you and say, oh, but you didn't test it on this, because that data happened not to be in your partial copy sandbox, you're going to say, you got me, dude. We're back another cycle. We got to go. So full copy sandbox. But in order to cross that blue line, this is where we empower our admins. The person, and by the way, anyone here got like 7 system administrators at your company? I forgot to ask. Oh, you get a hug. Who else? You get a hug. No, anyone else need a hug? Okay. So don't do it, guys. Let's pull that down a little bit. Let's get some governance going. Unless you're like on the Fortune 50, that's okay. Anyone here work for like Walmart or HP Enterprise or okay? No, okay. Pull that in. Someone needs to do that move over, and that is a nice use for change sets. That is a nice use for typing your username and password that you don't give to anyone else, so you type it yourself into the IDE, and all the changes come under your name. Why is that? Because that's your job, to be responsible for what's in the org. A developer is responsible for creating things, and you can create too, but you package it up nicely, and by the way, new packaging coming out at Trailhead X, and then we move it over. That's all you. So please accept that responsibility. Don't take it lightly. to go into your full copy sandbox for your testing, integration testing, and all that. Developers will have access to it because they're going to do a lot of integration testing, but that is you with your name on it. And then putting into production, of course, it's going to be your name on that move to production, right? We also have an expedited lane as well in case something is really important and needs to happen quickly. We're a little low on time, so I'm going to show you this, which is a more complicated version. Simplify it to your needs, but basically we've got developers working on the left, ignore it. We've got a QA testing. You can use a partial copy or a full copy. If you start with a partial copy, then you can move to a full copy, test your integration. Integration testing on partial is nice. That's nice to have. It's going to pull up some sort of issues, but really that full copy is important. And then we've got the production support full copy or the training. Those can be one sandbox. Those can be two sandboxes. Don't forget that when you train people on what's going on, they like to see their accounts. Every salesperson is going to say, well, I work on this account in whatever, Nebraska. Why is Nebraska not in this? Well, because it's a partial copy. I don't like that. This sucks. And this is real, guys. I mean, this actually happens. So work on production support. Production support and performance staging should probably be different because you're going to be making changes in performance staging. If it's worth it to you guys, to the company, if it's high enough value, do your training in a sandbox. Welcome to Salesforce DX. We're going to skip over that. So let's pretty much start tying it all together. Developer edition, sandboxes, change sets, promotion tools, IDEs. Please don't use an app exchange package to move things between orgs. It's just, it leaves an artifact of installed packages and what's going on, and it's just icky. I get it that sometimes it's necessary. No, actually it's not. It's no longer necessary. People used to do it. It used to be necessary. Learn about Scratch Org's Environment Hub for Salesforce DX with your developers. And don't forget, we are changing our paradigm to explain a little more about what used to be production as a source of truth. Now we're working within like a version control system. As an administrator, though, whatever's in production is the source of truth mentally for what's going on. Sandboxes still come off of that. People will work off a source of truth to move up to production, but you guys are responsible for how the company functions. So with Trailhead DX here, there are very few changes that need to happen for a savvy administrator. Just partner with your developers. If I can, just work with them. Let them have their fun on the left side of that blue line, and don't even worry about it. The minute someone wants to cross the blue line, you got to stand up and assert what's going on. Be that gatekeeper, maintain the policies, and have someone working with you. So you can do it. Know your systems. And I put a whole lot of sandboxes on some of those slides. If it doesn't apply to you, scale it down. That's OK. But just don't forget that we don't make changes straight in production, and we probably want to do like at least 2 hops so that people have a place that's messy, there's a staging environment, and then it goes into production. And where do I go to learn more? I mean, seriously? We can do Trailhead, and we can play with little stuffed animals. And we can talk to dead scientists. These are my favorite modules. I'm going to leave you pretty much with two thoughts. One is take these modules, do these modules. These are really important for, I think, any administrator whose org is more than 10 users, where you're all in one office. And if you want different ways of getting at data. Limiting data, we haven't even talked about how to limit data access. Really important. And then don't forget to go to trust.salesforce.com. Not just to see the uptime of your instance, which is very important, but there is learning there too. And if I say that, I guess that website's about to turn into Trailhead now that I've said it. That's a joke. But go there and learn about security on trust.salesforce. People will ask questions at your company about trust, about security, about all that stuff. It's wonderful. It is a truly wonderful site. So I'll just say thank you there. And if there are any questions, let's hit it. Thank you. Question up front. How do I feel about admins making changes to page layouts, list views, and stuff? So we have to understand that. So personally, I think that if you're in a very small company, it's OK. I will tell you that because you have to move things through UAT or a staging environment, making changes to page layouts is a lot more important than people think. And if you make a change in production that's like, oh, it's just a cosmetic change, that's great, except that any developer working through, any UX person working in a sandbox, you've now stepped on their toes. So I actually believe that you shouldn't make any changes except for creating reports that are personal reports in production. Workflow, process builder, dashboards, page layouts. I get it, don't get me wrong. There's someone who at your company who is going to be unhappy with you. And as an administrator, we take enough hits from people who are unhappy with something. So let's protect ourselves. Yes? The difference between UAT and staging is purely a label. I apologize. Well, some make them separate. So staging is where all the changes are coalesced to make sure they work together. All the testing happens. That's sort of a staging place where things are rough. You know it's going to be rough. So in some companies, that's a separate sandbox where I haven't made the page layout yet. So all the workflows are there, the processes are there, the triggers are there, but the page layout is terrible. It's a functional area. UAT, user acceptance testing, is sort of that, okay, now the page layouts are what they should be. You know, the button, we took off the buttons we don't want. We made it really proper. And probably we've gone through, if you're multilingual, and tested that it looks right in French and all the labels are set. So does that make sense? Staging is very functional, and UAT is actually what it's going to look like. Staging is before UAT. Staging is rough compared to what's going to. UAT should be really close to production, like really close to production. You're going to see a lot of errors in UAT with integration, and users are going to come in and say, it doesn't work this way, it should work this way. Make those little minute changes. I think we have time for one more question, and then that's, all right, well then we have time to go get lunch. Thank you very much, everybody.